Welcome back. Super excited to get into these Resonator builds. Check it out, I got a box. If you guys remember Bruce and Cameron up in Idaho, if you watched the brass build, I think it was build number 3, Bruce and Cameron, his son Cameron, they cut out all of the top and some sound wall pieces and other various parts for that brass build. Well, they've done it again. They have this fancy whiz-bang computer thing that takes big pieces of metal and makes little pieces of metal all day. It's magic and science and stuff, I don't know. Anyway, they did it again and it's awesome. Look how good this stuff is. It's totally amazing. Bruce, you guys are incredible. You and Cameron do great work. Okay, so one of these Resonators is the one that we're building for Mr. Paul Welten. If you guys don't know Mr. Paul Welten and his buddy Fritz, they do some incredible music, original stuff, and it's amazing. They're both amazing together. They're awesome. Go check out Mr. Paul Welten on YouTube after you've watched everything on here twice. I had to spin an arm and a leg and a hip and some fingers maybe on this sheet of bronze, and that sheet of bronze was big enough to get 2 Resonators out of it, so I figured, oh, we might as well build 2 at once. So what you're going to see in this build series is you're going to see the first one, which is Paul Welten's, and the second one, which is a traditional 14 fret, the large one like the 2 mild steel ones that I built earlier. Paul's is a little bit special. Paul and I spent a bunch of time going over a lot of details. It's slightly smaller to reduce some weight. It's a custom shape. The neck attaches at the 13th fret. There's some interesting features about it, and it's a really cool design, and it's going to be really neat to see it come together. We'll cover that kind of stuff later, but for now, let's get going on these builds. All right, I got them out of the box. I got all the tabs. You know, when Bruce cuts them, he leaves these parts kind of tabbed together, which is good because it ships better that way. Bruce just does such a nice job with this stuff. I think bronze is my new favorite material to build these out of. Now we just got to make 2 Resonators out of this. That sounds easy. So you can see here I've got all the edges kind of deburred. So we're ready to start bending over the sides on these. Now the 14 fret version, if you guys remember, I had those big steel metal templates cut to do the bend overs on that. So that's already taken care of. But Paul's is a one-off, and so I don't have a template for that to do the bend over. So we're going to have to make a master template right now, and we're going to have to make a template that we can also bend the sides over on. I'm looking for a piece of material to make this master template out of. Ideally, I would use that piece of white piece of corian you saw there, but it was about 1.5 inches too short, or like that many meters. So yeah, I couldn't use that, so I found this piece of plywood and I've cut it up square, and that's what we're going to use for the master template. The bummer part of this process is the bronze top is cut larger than the actual size of the guitar because it's cut big enough to accommodate the edge that gets bent over. So I have to painstakingly measure inward from the line I drew to develop a perfect edge. It takes forever. While I do that, let's move on to the second template we need. The second template is an exact copy of the first, only it needs to be a very dense material that we can hammer against. I have some really nice 2-inch rock hard maple that's flats on. I've never used it for a guitar because I'm worried it will curl and not be stable enough. This is a perfect use for it. It's a little odd to make a template from such nice wood, but it'll work good for this. So I glue up this blank and clamp it up and set it aside, let that glue dry. Let's see how I'm doing with the measuring. Oh, I'm doing it sitting down now. Man, it takes forever. Okay, that's roughed out on the bandsaw. For you guys that bandsaw stuff, how close to the line are you willing to get with your bandsaw? I hate the sanding part of it, and I much prefer the bandsawing part, so I don't mind spending the time to get really close to that line, so I don't have to do so much sanding. Okay, one perfectly sanded plywood template. Okay, I've got it sitting on the piece of bronze now, and you can see how big the bend over is going to be for the sides. This will sit on top of the piece that I bend, and then the side will bend down onto the maple piece, because the maple piece is going to have a much harder edge than this plywood. So the plywood will work fine for holding the top of it flat while you do this bending. So I think we can probably get this out of the clamps now and start making that into the bottom of the form. I need to establish a center line on this master template, and ideally the glue joint on the maple template, the big one, would also be the center line, so that it just makes it easy to get everything all lined up. Well, I'm this close to finishing bandsawing this thing, but look at it's about to break. So I hate it when they break while you're using it because sometimes they go wild. Not usually, but sometimes they do. So that's going to slow me down for now. Guess I got to wait for a new blade to show up here. Okay, when I do these things and I get ready to route a body blank on a template, I like to get this thing just where I'm just barely shaving anything off of it. I mean, just barely. That way you have way less risk of chunking pieces off, like right on the shoulders of all of these pieces. When the router bit comes around, when it hits it, it'll, because it's going with the grain, it'll want to just chunk these off if you're trying to take big amounts of material off. So really sharp bit and really just barely take anything off would pretty much get you through this cleanly every time. Okay, there's the first pass done. You can see how little I'm taking off with that thing. Really keeps me from ever having any kind of blowout or any chunking out of the maple slab. I'm ready to take the template off and do the last pass. But my son just walked in here and took my drill with the screw tip in it. Now I gotta find a screwdriver of all things. Well, I hope I find a use for this 2-inch thick maple resonator blank. That's pretty amazing. I mean, it's certainly going to have its use when we shape the bend over, but beyond that, it doesn't have a use after that. Good night. I thought we were building a metal guitar. All right, I thought I'd show you why it's nice to make these out of metal and not wood. And also, this is a really good visual of why I didn't want to use plywood to do this bend over. Like, look right there, you can see where, as I bent it over, the metal edge cut into the wood. And then you can see it just takes a beating, right? Like, as you're doing it. You don't have to hit this thing hard. I mean, it's really light, the amount of tapping you're doing on it. But the wood, it just doesn't stand up to it. It's fine to do it one time with the wood one, but you do this a couple of times and I'm guessing this wood one would just be too trashed to bend over those sides like that. So I'm going to do the other one right now with the metal thing, so you'll see those in action. But it's the same process, it's just these are made out of metal, not wood. Hopefully you can kind of see just how well that side fits this form. These metal templates were worth every penny. Super happy with that result. Now I just got to do the back of this one and we're done bending edges over. Okay, if you want to get good at hammering with your offhand, in my case, my left hand, I did a ton of left hand hammering to do these edges. Just do 4 of these and you'll be amazed at how much you'll use your offhand to do the hammering and how much better your offhand will get at hammering. I'm so happy I made this transition to the smaller edge and no more tabs, because that's a lot of work too. And I don't know, this just gives a really clean solder joint. It gives it a really clean edge. Like, the edge is just so nice. I think what's next we're gonna do is probably do the depression for the sound well to sit in these on the bead roller. I've made a lot of progress on refining my process. But sometimes when I edit these videos, I still see so much room for improvement. Just marking a line on the top of the top for the bead roller, that takes forever to measure that all out and get it all centered. A simple jig that you drop in the hole could make that so quick. I guess I gotta make some more jigs and pieces. That bead roller does such a nice job. It's such a neat tool. Kind of one of my favorite tools in here, maybe. It takes an extreme amount of focus to get through that. In fact, sometimes my eyes just go blurry, like because this is shiny and the little wheel that does the bending is black and the line is black. I don't know. It's just hard for me to focus on it the whole time. It takes a long time. I did that in time lapse, and you would be amazed at how slow of a process that is and how much focus it requires. Like you have to pay attention, 100% attention the whole time. Go slow. Don't screw it up. Don't do anything crazy. Get it right. One thing that I've changed about how I do this bead roll is I now start and stop at the bottom down here, because that's the hardest part, is making the two meet up again. So if you do it down here at the bottom, it's always going to be covered by the tailpiece. Okay, it's way too early to be thinking about all this stuff, but I kind of want to get Paul's mind going so he can kind of think about some of this stuff. This is a little harder to visualize right now because I sanded it a little bit and the color hasn't come back yet, but it will. But I do need Paul to kind of start thinking about some of these fretboards. Now, of course, I have my favorite on this guitar, but that one to me is just really stunning. I love the colors with the bronze. So if you like any of these, Paul, please put it in the comments. I bet everybody would like to know what you kind of like. If you don't like any of these, then we'll get something else. I also think just a solid black would look really nice on this bronze too. And I don't have any solid black ones here. Oh, I might. I'll dig one out and get some more video. But yeah, a solid black would look really cool. I really like this one. I don't know why. The colors to me just really complement the bronze. Really digging the mild steel cover plate on the bronze more than I like the brass colored cover plate on the bronze, although I do kind of like that. I like this better. I don't have a bronze one yet to see how a bronze on bronze would look. I'm almost starting to think that would be just too much bronze. Something about this bronze really wants an accent color to me. And so, I don't know. So far, I'm digging this setup right here. I don't know what Paul's going to choose yet. I haven't cut his cover plate yet. We have a special design for his cover plate. He didn't want any of the usual standard ones, so he has a special one. I may wait until we sort of maybe try and decide what kind of material we want to cut it out of. So he's got a lot to think about here. So that's kind of what his would be with the mild steel. Yeah, something to think about, Paul. Give all this some thought and let me know what you think. I've got some wild fretboards here. Oh yeah. It's got wild stripes and stuff on it. These some of these ebony ones I have are pretty darn wild. Okay, lots of food for thought. Get on it, Paul. It's a new day in the shop, and the first order of business is replacing worn out and breaking bandsaw blades. This is a Timberwolf blade I'm putting on the wood saw. It's advertised as a resaw blade. I bought this blade before and was very happy with it. It's 4 teeth per inch and I think it's 5/8 inch deep, so a little big for detail work, but I'm okay with that. The metal bandsaw is getting a machinist 14 teeth per inch blade, I think 1/2 inch deep. This blade probably costs more than the saw is worth. So right now I got to cut some sound wells out of this sheet, some strips for the sound wells for these two guitars out of this sheet. When you ship this stuff around, the corners just get beat up. I've already started to straighten these. This one was really bad. It was bent at almost a 90. Like if you're laying out your sheet to maximize every tiny little bit of it, just know that you're probably going to have to sacrifice at least a couple of the corners unless you want to really do some metal work and get it super flat. So I just want to flatten these up a little bit so that they don't get in my way while I'm trying to lay it out and work on it. I'm laying out the soundwell strip dimensions so I can cut them on that new bandsaw blade. The overall width of the soundwell strip has to include the length of the tabs that get bent over and then soldered to the top. And it also has to include whatever dimension you choose to bend over the lip that supports the cone inside the guitar. If you followed that explanation, you are way above average. If you're like me, it will make sense later. Just give it a minute. Alright, I'm ready to cut all the little slots to make the tabs on the sound wells. If you're wondering why I didn't get this done when Bruce cut all that stuff out for me, it's because his smallest bit is an 1/8 inch. It makes an 1/8 inch slot. An 1/8 inch is fine for these, but I forgot that he was 1/8 inch only. And I think I drew my slots smaller than 1/8 inch, so Bruce didn't realize he could cut those at an 1/8 inch. They definitely look nicer when he cuts them out because they have nice little round, I don't know, where it comes in, it's round, where it comes out, it's round. It looks really sexy. When I do it, everything's just straight. It probably took me, it's going to end up taking me probably 3 extra hours to make these Soundwell strips, where had I remembered that Bruce could only cut 1/8 inch, that would have saved me a bunch of time. But it's all good. Okay, 2 Soundwell strips completed, done the old-fashioned way with brute force and patience. A few videos ago, I kind of stopped working on stuff and took a step back, and I just tried to work out a process for making high-quality Soundwells. That effort has really paid off. This process no longer intimidates me like it used to. One thing different with the brass and the bronze is I can't tack weld them together with my MIG welder, so I'm soldering on a temporary strap to hold it all together while I work on it. Once it's in the guitar, I can remove the strap. Kind of ugly right now, but that got great penetration. I could see the solder go in one side and come out the other while I was doing it, so that's going to be a nice bond. If any of you are wondering if solder is a strong enough option for building these guitars, look at the beating that strap I soldered on is taking. It shows no signs of coming off or coming apart. I've tried to break solder joints by hand with like pliers and sticking it in the vise and stuff. If you prep these pieces well before soldering, it's nearly impossible to get them apart without some sort of hydraulic or mechanical assistance. Oh yeah, perfectly flat, okay. This is the part of the Soundwell process I need to get a handle on next. The quality on these Soundwells is there now. Now I need to work on the efficiency. This part in particular is way too slow. Well, it wasn't that long ago that these were a huge issue for me, and man, I'm so glad we turned that corner. Okay, those came out fantastic. I'm ready to solder these into the tops, which means we're making really good progress. Okay, I had these big metal circles cut that are the perfect size. And I've adjusted the size that I cut the circle in the top, plus the bead roll gives me just a slightly larger size. I mean, we're talking almost press fit, which means now I can put my Soundwell, which fits perfectly over these, on this, and it's now centered perfectly in the top. That took me a long time before to get all this centered up. Oh, the other thing I did is I've modified how big I make these tabs so that they match the size of the little depression that I make for the cover plate to sit in. The brass one, these were 1/4 inch bend overs, these tabs, and they ended up being longer than the depression for the cover plate. And so it ended up holding a lot more solder in there than I would have liked. And solder's heavy, it adds a lot of weight. And so I really want to cut back on how much solder we get into these things. I'm working through all the little details that I can and that come to mind and that I think of. You guys notice things and bring them to my attention, and I work on them then as well. But we're making great progress on how efficient these are coming together and what the quality is, and just looking at all the little details. I'm really trying to get all that stuff dialed in.
My presence in this moment time, and I can't wait to get out of here. Oh, I remember when what brought me here. For once I lost my self-control. Oh, it's a hard thing to do.
Okay, that's a wrap on this episode. That was incredible progress I'm making in pretty short amount of time. I don't have anything else to add, so I think we can just bail out of here. I mean, I could put a bunch of adjectives in front of how much I really like those and how I think they're coming out, but no need. Here's one of the straps that I took off of the sound wells after I got it soldered into the top. You can see how well the solder kind of wicks through there. I mean, that's super cool. Super cool how that wicking action works. Tune in for the next one. We're going to make a whole ton more progress. We'll probably have finished bodies on both of these in the next episode, I would guess. I don't know why I wouldn't. And we'll probably start on the next. Paul, you got a lot of work to do figuring out what looks good on these things. Maybe I'll send you a video just between you and me, and it'll have more detail showing you some of the options we have. Okay, I think that's it. Let's get out of here for reals. Thanks, guys, for following along. Really appreciate it. 2 finished bodies in the next episode. I still got to shape the backs. What was I thinking?